Hello, I'm George Cairns and I'll be guiding you through Teach Yourself Photoshop, a complete course to help you master the art of image editing. Part 2 of your course introduces you to editing raw format photographs, like this Canon RAW file that you'll find on your disk. And to open it up in Photoshop, just drag it into the Photoshop window and it will recognize that this is a raw format file, it's uncompressed, and it will open it up in the Camera Raw editor. Now, when I say that a RAW file is uncompressed, what I mean is this. Many cameras will actually change color and exposure and adjust the image and even sharpen it up in the camera itself. So they're processing the picture and creating a compressed version, a version with some of the information missing. Whereas a RAW file is uncompressed, and all of the changes to color and tone and sharpness can be made using these sliders here and these tools at the top. So in this first video I'm going to give you a brief overview of the RAW editor so you know what all the tabs do and what all the tools can do, and then you can refer to this video at any time to find out the name or job of a particular tool or tab. And we'll look at all of the tools in greater detail as we work through our 6 video tutorials. To help you understand more about why RAW files are so cool, I'm just going to have a quick look at the RAW file in its original folder, and you can see that it's 9.44 megabytes. That's quite a large file, and if we'd saved it as a compressed JPEG on our camera, it would be much smaller. And the reason the file is so big is because there's 3 color channels, red, green and blue, and they're all packed full of information about the color and tone of the photograph. And if we want to get even more information out of our RAW file, we can change depth to 16 bits per channel, and then we've got much more quality and much more choice about brightness and contrast and tone, and we'll just get a much better looking print by popping this up to 16 bits. So let's kick off our overview of the RAW editor by looking at the toolbar, and you can see here we have a handy zoom tool, and if we just click we can zoom in and get a better look at our pixels so we can see whether we've got any sharpness problems, for example. You can also zoom in using these tools down the bottom, and if you go to 100%, this gives you a much clearer view over the quality of your photograph. If you then need to zoom around within this magnified view, grab the hand tool and you can then reposition the shot, and we can then spot other problems that may not be visible when we are zoomed at full view. But if you do want to zoom out again, just click here and choose Fit in View. Next up we have the white balance tool, and you'll see this tool in action later on. I'm going to show you all of these tools in other movies to actually improve our photographs properly. This is just a general introduction. We have the crop tool that allows you to then recompose a shot to change its composition, and again we'll have a look at that later, so I'm pressing escape to undo that crop. Straighten is another way to crop and straighten at the same time. If you have wonky horizons, you can just click and drag to follow the horizon and it will then crop and rotate the shot in one go. Next up we have the red eye removal tool, and if you're taking photographs at a party using a flash, you may find the flash bounces off the retinas of the subject and creates glowing red eyes, and this is a good way of taming that by just simply clicking in the eyes of the subject, and that will turn the red eyes down to black again. And you can choose darken to make it even blacker, and if you've got a really good close-up you can increase the pupil size, though 9 times out of 10 the defaults work quite well, and you just click to banish red eye. This option here lets you change camera raw preferences, though to be honest you don't really need to make any changes here at all because Photoshop is set up to work in the correct way. So I'm not going to confuse you with sidecar files or any jargon like that. Just click cancel and we'll leave that be. And finally you can rotate things counterclockwise or clockwise depending on the needs of your photograph. So that's the toolbar in a brief summary. Let's just go back to zoom tool to get rid of the red eye tools and see the shot more clearly. Now let's pop up to here, and you've got the handy histogram that shows you the spread of tones from shadows at the left, midtones in the middle, and it should be highlights right up here at the right, but you can see the shot is underexposed and the graph doesn't quite get as far as it can. So what we're going to do is just boost the exposure of the shot to try and make it look a little bit healthy. And it's almost like going back in time and changing the settings on your camera, because that's what you can do with RAW files. Let's work our way down through this Basics tab now, and we'll get to exposure in just a tick, but I'm just going to talk you through the sliders as we come to them. We'll look at white balance in much more detail in a following movie, but here you can change the presets just like you can on the back of the camera to something more suitable like daylight or cloudy, for example, and that changes the temperature slider, and you can also adjust that manually to warm up or cool down your photograph, and you can remove tints using this slider here if the shot is too green or magenta, for example. Now you can see the Basics tab is broken up into sections, so there's a little line here and a line here. So these sliders in between are all to do with exposure and brightness, and we can change our rather underexposed shot by dragging exposure to the right, take it up to around 0.75, and that brightens up the shot. Visually, you can also see that the highlights now are a little bit stronger. These have slid towards the right of the histogram, so we now have a brighter looking shot. We can see the before by clicking preview, click again to see the after. So you can see that the processed raw shot is now looking a lot better than the unprocessed version. And the great thing about the Camera Raw editor is it lets you target specific tones individually. So if your highlights are too bright, you can recover blown out detail using this slider here. You can lighten up murky midtones with the fill light slider, and you can boost the blacks independently of the midtones and highlights by dragging blacks to the right. You can also use the good old-fashioned brightness and contrast just to try and change the shot to make it look brighter but have a wider range of shadows, midtones and highlights. And down the bottom here we have color sliders. If I just click to zoom in a little bit, you can see that with clarity it makes very subtle changes there along the trees at the top, very subtle tonal changes. Click here to fit in view, and a really useful slider, one of the most useful in fact, is vibrance, because that boosts weak colours without over boosting strong colours, so you can actually get a nice healthy range of colours without creating colours that won't print. So if you drag that to the right, you can see the sky's changing there, but these very vivid yellows aren't changing too much. So vibrance is much more effective than saturation, which boosts all the colours in one go. So there's a rundown of the Basic tab, and then if we click here you can see the Detail tab, and we're going to put this through its paces in a later video on this particular disc. But we've also got this tool here which is Camera Calibration, and that lets you choose the specific settings that you've worked out in the Basics tab and save them as your own default, so they'll be applied automatically to each photograph that you import. But I'll show you how to do that again in a later video on this disc. So there's a brief overview of all of the tabs and tools in the RAW editor. Let's just click back on Basics again, and we've also boosted the depth per channel to 16 bits, so we've got a high quality processed RAW image. It's like developing the photograph and making it ready for print. And if you want to print it, you can save it in a different format by clicking Open Image, and that will take our edited RAW file into the standard Photoshop editor. We can then go to File, Save As, and we've got a 16-bit file, so it's full of quality. And that leaves us with a variety of different options to save it in, and you can stick to TIFF or PSD Photoshop document and then just click save, and that will save your edited file ready for printing later. So that's a brief introduction to the RAW editor. In the next movie we're going to have a look at setting up white balance to make sure the shot is not too warm or too cool.